I see you're wearing the glasses. I want to talk about enclothed cognition. What is that?
Okay. Enclothed cognition is just this really funny, weird phenomenon that we have as human beings. We're both a product of science. Like we're atoms, and you can break us down, and but there's also this interesting part of the human experience where we're also narrative and we're storytelling beings. Like something happens to us, and then we immediately tell our own story about what that thing meant to us, and it could be largely filtered by our emotion in the moment as well. So enclosed cognition is that we tell stories about objects and things. So when we see someone walk into a room with a doctor's coat on, we immediately, based on whether it's cultural engineering or our own beliefs and experiences about doctors, we tell ourselves a story about what it means that that person just walked in with a doctor's coat on. They might be smart, they might be detailed, they might be methodical. That person's carrying with them a set of traits that's going to make them make up a story in our own head. Now, the interesting thing about it is when we put on an object, a uniform, a doctor's coat, what we naturally do in our own heads is whatever associations we tell ourselves the story is about that thing, we will naturally enclothe our abilities in the traits and the qualities of that thing. So if I put on a doctor's coat, if the story I have about wearing a doctor's coat or people who wear doctor's coats is a positive one, and it's that they're smart and they're detailed and they're methodical, we'll actually become that. It will start to change our behavior and how we see the world in that moment. And I mean, as someone who's been building powerful kind of personas, identities, and alter egos, and wrote the book on it for over 23 years, every year, everyone gets invited into my fun world of personas and enclothed cognition, because Halloween happens every year and we see it all the time. The moment someone puts on, the Darth Vader costume, they start walking and, operating in a more deliberate way. Or, when Chase throws on his sexy nurse outfit, he all of a sudden becomes a little bit more free. But no, that's what it is like we as human beings, we tell stories about objects. And the crazy thing is if you're someone who needs to become more confident, or you need to become more articulate, or you need to feel like you're more smart so you can take the exam and the test, well, go and put on an object that you've already built a story around that helps to make that thing come alive. It's just built into the wiring of how humans operate.
The old adage, look good, play good, or look good, feel good, or that's got some basis of science, it sounds like.
Well, it's just whether it is a part of the kind of maybe scientific explanation, but as someone who I built up one of the world's largest sports performance companies, and I started in the, mental game coaching world long before coaching was an industry, and long before, say, sports psychology or mental game stuff was ever a thing. Back in 1997, people talk about mindset stuff now as if it was just always a topic. No, it wasn't. People, when I first started, thought that I was a snake oil salesman, or like whatever sort of negative attribute that you wanted to throw on someone who talked about helping, an athlete build up their inner game or their mental game. All of those different negative associations were lobbed at me. But what I quickly got into, because what I didn't appreciate about this world of even personal development, self-help, and it's largely a lot of platitudes and stuff that isn't rooted in kind of validation or evidence-based stuff. So I got into that really quickly. I was the first person to bring neuroscience into the world of sports. So I had 3 researchers from MIT and Harvard who were a part of my board, who were constantly kind of vetting and passing research information to me. So I was very much indexed towards science. But if you work with human beings, you're 100% full of shit if you think everything can be explained by science. It cannot. We are a blend of 2 things: science, definitely. There are things that are very predictable about how the human body can work, but then there's something that can get in the way of that, and that's the art. And that's because we are storytelling. We are meaning-making machines. So yeah, there is a blend of science in that we could try to explain it down. But at the end of the day, there is also creativity. And that is one of our X factors as human beings, is our creative imagination. Nothing else on the planet has it.
What would you say the blend is when it comes to working with somebody towards that improvement or optimizing themselves as an athlete versus science and art?
Yeah. So, I mean, most of us will come in, most of the like clients will come in with a preference. Like there's some people who are very cognitive. They're very like they think and they like to strategize. And just like any of us, the listener, you know, whoever you are, you'll probably sort of lean in one direction, and that's okay. But then sometimes it gets into the level of toxicity, because a root principle that underlies everything that myself and my company operates through is nature. Nature tells us whether or not something is true or false most of the time. And in nature, nothing is only ever good. Oxygen isn't only ever good, because it can be degrees of oxygen. All of a sudden we could, you know, die from too much oxygen exposure. So the level of oxygen. Water isn't only good. That's where floods and then drought, you know, the opposite end of that happens. So things happen on a spectrum. And this is where your own self-awareness can come in, where someone who comes in and they're a little bit more on the cognitive, maybe scientific, explain it to me side of things. They can sometimes take it to the level of toxicity, where it's now becoming a brake that you're pulling, and it's just slowing you down. Yeah. So for that person, I'm going to try and pull them a little bit more onto this side of the equation of using creativity. And that's going to also come in the form of trusting. You got to trust, like you got to be comfortable with the unknown. Someone who really over indexes a lot on strategizing, or, you know, whatever word you want to use, that sort of explains the thinking process side of things, can be crippled with inaction then. And, you know, a lot of our great wisdom comes from fucking doing it, like getting out there and trying it and exposing yourself to it. So with these people, I want to try to get them to really, for everybody, I'm at the end of the day, the one goal I have is for them to trust themselves. Trust is the goal. That's it. Truth is the goal for someone. Nothing else can get in the way from my perspective of getting someone to their own truth of how they can be experiencing their capabilities, their skills, their attributes, their traits. And in that, there is a uniqueness to make that happen. There's a certain way that you're built, Chase, that I'm not built. You're built in a certain way. There's certain, you know, qualities and traits that you have, and I'm going to use those as a mechanism to help you find your peak performance.
Real quick, before we get too deep into this conversation, I wanted to give you guys a peek under the hood when it comes to the data. So the data on this app shows me that less than 21% of my average monthly listeners are actually subscribed to the show. Now, subscribing to the show helps way more than you'd think. It helps the show get pushed out to more people. It helps the show grow. It helps me get more guests. It helps improve the quality. So if you guys like listening to me, and more importantly, like listening to the guests that I'm bringing on, do me a quick favor, hit the subscribe button right here on this app, and we will continue to grow the show bigger and better with each and every episode. Thank you so much. That's really interesting. I skew more towards the analytical and the strategy and the skew, like I'm all the way over that side. And so when I talk to some certain people, especially on this podcast, like there are some people I've talked to, you know, with theologians, and when I'm talking about like these more abstract creative ideas, like I struggle personally to understand what they're saying, because they're speaking in like kind of these abstract, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, give me the practical, give me the analytical. And I've mentioned this before, but I call it the, paradox of over optimization, or whatever you want to call it. But like, for example, we'll take my sleep, like very analytical. Okay, I want to I want to have the best sleep ever. I know how important sleep is. I don't take caffeine, so like I need to have a good night's rest. So, I'll cool down my room. I'll wear my blue light blocking glasses. I'll turn off my phone. I'll take my magnesium. I'll read a fiction, but I'll do all of these things. And then if something doesn't go right, or if I just can't fall asleep that night, it's like, oh, my entire next day shot, I didn't do it the right way. Like it's all downhill. And that was me pretty hardcore when I was competing in my sport. When I was trying to do what I was doing, is everything had to be optimized. And I started to realize that by only working on this and strategizing and optimizing this, like if there was like a grain of sand in the machine that caused it, like my whole day would be overblown. So now I look at it in the sense of, I'll try to do the things that I need to do to improve my sleep, but if it doesn't go well, I can still perform and do what I need to do, even with even with poor sleep. And
That's
having
right.
that kind of identity shift where, yes, I'm going to do the things that I can do, but if it doesn't go well, I can still perform, takes so much pressure off. Like now it doesn't matter nearly as much.
Well, and I mean, even to break your own logic steps. So you say that you're analytical and you're that thing, you're going to skew in that direction. And yet you took it to the level where it's not even that this band of, creativity sits on this side, or the creative imagination sits over here, and then the logical thinking brain sits over here. It's almost like the political spectrum. It's not that the far right and the far left are so far away from each other. It's actually a curve that bends down. And then at the very bottom down here, you're going to find what you end up finding. You created a superstition. That's what, like anytime someone, I had a professional baseball player that I was working with. This goes back a long time. And he had built up, baseball's a funny one because it has a lot of superstitions built into it. Like even the culture of baseball talks about superstitions more than kind of any other sport. And I've worked in 90 plus of them. And, but when he's traveling on the road and he was going to be pitching that day, if he woke up and he wasn't facing the window of the hotel, he thought that today was going to be a bad outing. Like, but I mean, it's because, and so where did that come from? It's because he woke up one day and he was facing the window. He just noticed it. That's all he did. It was kind of like, nice day. The sun was streaming through, felt really good as well about the upcoming start that he had. The team was on a little bit of a roll. So that helps an athlete feel a little bit more, quote, confident when they're going into something. And he went out and he pitched close to a no-hitter, which, if you know anything about baseball, is an absolute epic event for you to go do that. So now, a little grain of a belief that's there. And then he went out and he compounded that by the next time that he pitched happened to be another away game. And he woke up facing the window. And he went out and he had a really good start. Didn't even notice that he faced the window. It was just afterwards. He's like, well, what did I do today? Just like you were doing. You were creating like, hey, when I have the blue light blocking glasses on and I have my room down to 62 degrees, and the windows are all blocked off, it's going to be a great sleep. So he went back and sort of reviewed the game film on the pregame side of things. And he's like, oh, you know what? Actually, in the other game when I almost hit through the no-hitter, and then this game, I woke up facing the window. So now that's what, boom, all of a sudden he became ruled by that. And so it's a superstition. So that's what you're doing is you're creating superstitions. What I encourage people with, the definition of mental toughness, period, end of game. No one else can give me and convince me of anything different. Mental toughness is truly, in its definition, your ability to be flexible and adaptable despite your circumstances. That's what it is. If you are mentally tough, the attitude is, give it to me. Oh no, there's not enough light, or there's too much light coming through. I don't care. I'm going to go to sleep. Oh no, it's too hot. I don't care. Like I'll be fine tomorrow. I can operate on 1 hour of sleep. Do I want to do that every single day? No. But flexibility, adaptability, agility, those are, anyone who's trying to do this work, or if you're trying to read books to better yourself, if you're not trying to make yourself more flexible, adaptable, and agile, then your pursuit is pretty off.
It's a fantastic definition. It reminds me of Jocko Willing, just good. Something bad
Mm-hmm.
happened, good. Like that,
Yeah.
his response in extreme ownership. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. I was literally thinking about that last night. I was thinking about, I have a last man standing like ultra marathon coming up in 2 weeks. And so I have times where I consider myself like a mentally tough person. Like I'm willing to do things that puts my body in an uncomfortable position, and I am capable of just shutting that out and continuing. But on the other flip side, I'm like, can be so inflexible with certain things, and just being able to look back and be like, that's not mental toughness. Like that is the exact opposite of mental toughness. So I love that definition, just the ability to
But
accept.
is it you being inflexible, or is it learned experience of creating boundaries for certain things, right? Like for me, for example, I mean, where this breaks for most people is in social or cultural contexts. Okay, it's one of the most difficult parts of the human experience is navigating social, and whether it's familial relationships, just family relationships. It's a very difficult part for most people. And ironically, that's when people talk to me about like, hey, like, I mean, I've had hundreds and thousands of professional athletes that I've worked with and spoken to over the years. And I mean, again, because of my topic category, the mental game, I'm getting a very clear window into how that person is truly navigating life and the struggles that they have. I'm not like a personal or physical trainer, right? Where I'm spotting them as they're doing a bench press. That's a different relationship. When someone is inviting you in between the 6 inches of their ears or their emotions, it's a very different lens on what's happening. That's why I like the experience of working with Kobe or, Rafael Nadal. I sort of laugh at most sports commentary because it's got everything written down into cliches and platitudes, and it's not really how an athlete would think or be talking about their game. But should I just lost my train of thought with it? Refresh my memory. Where's I going?
We were talking about my inflexibility, and you said, "Is it setting boundaries?"
On the social side. So
Yeah.
my point is, in talking to the athletes, so much of our conversations is, hey, like, can you help? Like, I'm struggling with coach. There's a new coach that just came in. Coach changes happen all the time. I just got traded to a new team, or I just signed with a brand new team. How do I deal with the team dynamic? A lot of their stressors are from social stuff, like the dynamics of team, other competitors, how to navigate that. Most of them understand their sport really well. And there's incremental things you can do, but where I can add a ton of value is in being that trusted advisor, that consigliere that actually has skill and frameworks that I can give to them on how to navigate this difficult situation that there is. So, what you're talking about when it comes to inflexibility, sometimes it's also boundaries, which are very healthy because they're learned experiences where you're like, no, I don't put up with this. That's not inflexibility. That's having standards as well.
For sure. But with your definition in that inflexibility, if having that boundaries, I'm not saying necessarily it's not good to have those, but we can't always control that. And sometimes if it breaks, my mindset will be like, well, chalk it up as a loss now instead of accepting it and saying I can still perform.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, we see it all the time. I see it all the time with, say, social media content about, if someone's just toxic in your life, then you need to delete them from your life. You don't need to be around that family member. It's like, well, before we make that judgment call, let's make sure that you're not the toxic one. Okay. Or what are the filters and the philosophies and the lenses that you look at life through, which actually help to create this sort of toxic relationship? How much do you contribute to it as well? So, and again, like if you honestly think, if you're someone who's pursuing success and like real success, like I'm talking about, like you want to be the best in your category, or you want to be phenomenal at what you do, you want to make an impact at what you do, then you had better be really comfortable in being inside of rough situations and being around people that are different. Like, I love it. I love being around people who, others would view as very toxic, because I've built up this massive skill set around how to navigate those things. I also know the human condition very well. So my narrative is sort of, I'm very comfortable. Like, I know what the root of why someone might be saying these things is. So there's an understanding that's there.
Of course.
As well.
I was speaking with Britt Frank. She's a psychotherapist. She was super fun to talk to, but she talked about how exactly what we were saying is like TikTok, social media, experts, therapists will be like, cut this person out. They're toxic. She's like, not every relationship has to be optimized for its perfect situation. Like, yes, somebody may tell you to take a break from the gym sometime, but they may be the person that you also have the most fun with, and like lets you do some other things. So like there can be special different relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk to me about your initial exposure and interest into mindset coaching, and then the founding of your first company, the Peak Athlete.
So my initial interest in it came out of a rough experience when I was a teenager. I was 14 and I was competing in a volleyball tournament. I grew up on this big farm and ranch in southern Alberta, Canada. And we were right next to the border in Saskatchewan. So I was playing in a tournament in that province. And as I was going up to block this guy from the other team, he kept on kicking out his leg when he would do a spike, and his foot, and he would try to kick me in the groin every time under the net. So the first time you notice it, like, oh, like that was a freak thing. Second time, like, oh, there's a pattern that's here. And then the third time he kicked. And so it tried to kick me again in the groin. And so I reached through the net, grabbed him by the scruff of his jersey, pulled him in, and rode him twice. So connected with him twice on the jaw. Like, it was really, like Chase, it was perfect connection. Got him, and he dropped to the floor. And apparently fighting isn't condoned in volleyball. And so my coach, who was one of my first great mentors, Mr. Henderson, I obviously got kicked out of the tournament for fighting, and he pulled me aside afterwards, and after reading me the riot act of embarrassing our school for doing that, and no one else was seeing this. I'm like, he was trying to kick me in the balls, for crying out loud. Like, this is me at 14 years of age. So if it offends people, whatever, learn to live with it. But yeah, he was trying to kick me in the balls. That's what I was seeing. And like, what do you want me to do? And I already complained to the umpire twice. So I got kicked out of the tournament, and then he said, okay, I need you to do a book report. I need you to go to the library. I need you to get this book, and I need you to give me a book report, 2-page book report on it. And it was about basically personal leadership. And it was actually not a very good book, but he talked about mindset in it, and kind of mental toughness. And this is in the 1980s. So that sort of, it was like piqued my interest, because I never really heard that concept before. And that book, we were talking before about how it leads to, like, the next book leads to the next book. That sort of sent me down this rabbit hole of trying to master my mindset, and then couple that with Mr. Henderson telling me, like, listen, I know what your goals are. Like, I know what you want to go and do, but you really do need to master this part of you. Like, you're too emotional in games. Like, even your own teammates find it difficult for you to be around you. I mean, it's great that you've got this competitive fire, but you got to learn to channel it better, so that you're not that teammate that is just difficult to be around. Because I was hard on my teammates as well. Always looking for perfection from them. And again, the reality is, when you're in junior high school, no one else is going to be putting in the energy that you are, if that's the thing that you love to do. Some of them are just participating in the sport because either they have to, because it's a part of the school telling them they have to do it. So that's what got me down this rabbit hole of the mental game. And I started to really master my own emotions, and started to learning more about the brain processes, how we're kind of wired. And that carried me into getting college scholarships. And then after I was done playing football in college, I was volunteering at a high school working with the defensive backs. And I would spend more time with these young kids on their mental game. Like, hey, like you going and doing more cone drills, some more physical skills isn't going to help you when you're out there. Your issue is you're not preparing well. You don't really have clear direction and goals that you're setting for yourself so that you can kind of close a feedback loop of progress. That's really important for a human being to see that. Especially when you're in a competitive environment like sports is. And these kids started getting really great results because I would actually spend more time around. There's two things that really made it work. And this is something that everyone can take away. I was one of the first adults in their environment that treated them like they were already smart. Because I was talking to them about the amygdala. I'm like, hey, there's this thing that's in the racing in your brain and it like pulses and and I explain that to them. And then I would carry it forward into now your very left brain thinking side of the equation and this is how it practically shows up for you. Like if you do this, this is what it's connected to. So they started getting really great results. Actually in school is where they were getting some really big changes and shifts. And then a parent came to me one day and said, hey, Kirby loves working with you. Would you be able to mentor him? And I said, yeah, 100%. And she's like, okay, Todd, how much would you charge? And I said, how about $75 for a package of 3 sessions? And that was my starting price. And that's when the Peak Athlete was born. And that's who I was working with was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. That was my stable and roster of clientele in the very beginning.
What was the progression to Olympians and professional athletes?
Well, there was a couple things that activated it. One, I had no idea about business. I did not know how to market myself. The only thing that I really knew how to do as a skill was speak on stages, which to the average person, they're like, wait, out of all the things you could go and do, speaking was the one that you knew. And because I grew up in 4-H, which is like agricultural Boy Scouts. And when you're in 4-H in your club, you have to do a speaking competition. And I also had a couple of really great mentors in my own home, my parents. Even though they were farmers and ranchers, they both held political office as well because they always talked to us about being a part of the civil discourse and being a good civil participant in society as well, or contributing there. So I saw them give speeches. And so that was just normal to see someone get up on stage and do that. There was no narrative in our house that like, oh my God, someone would rather die than speak on a stage, which is one of the stupid, but it's not true. That's not, because if I held a gun to your head and said, can you speak for me right now? You would do it. So really speaking isn't more fearful than dying or has more fear than dying. Again, just another really stupid paradigm that's out there in the world that holds no water. So I spoke. So that was one thing. I did as many speeches as I possibly could around my province of Alberta where I lived at the time. And the great thing about speaking is it is the ultimate platform to master out of all of them. It's still to this day, and it goes back just anthropologically in the human experience. When we saw someone, in an amphitheater in Athens, Greece, holding court with people listening, it's just wired into our deep, deep, deep subconscious that when someone has a platform that, they're unique or special, whether it's true or not, it's just there. So I just happened to choose speaking. And I had a really great topic that I talked about, which was the triune athlete, the mentally, emotionally, and physically tough athlete. And when you align all three of these together, that's when someone's full capability is allowed to come out of them. So speaking is one. And then secondly is mentorship. I am a very big believer in apprenticing and being humble enough to tuck yourself under the wing of someone else. I think it's the one thing that's lost, and it has been lost for the last 10, 15 years, where the attitude is people just say they are something and then that they're the best at that thing and that they try to manufacture a whole bunch of expertise underneath themselves before they have any sort of wisdom or experience whatsoever to back up that claim. So I tried to go out and find whoever is the best, which was the advice I got from my parents. Whatever you go and do in life, because you're not going to become a farmer and rancher. Your other brothers are probably going to do that stuff. and we probably won't be able to help you with whatever your vocation is, but just make sure that you go and you tuck yourself underneath the best. And it was such prophetic advice, because when you really carry that idea through, there's a really, really deep meaning that's there. Because if you are someone who goes and gives yourself the gift of truly being around the best, really world-class people, it's actually a message to your own sense of self-esteem and self-worth that you're worthy of being around those people. You might not be as valuable as them yet. I wasn't concerned myself with that, but I knew that I could go and contribute something to them. So I literally would cold call them. I have the book of one of my mentors right here, Harvey Dorfman, the absolute greatest mental game coach to ever live. And he's known as the Yoda of baseball, wrote the Bible of the industry, Coaching the Mental Game, amongst many others. And I cold called him, reached out. He called me back, and he lived in North Carolina, a long way away from where I was living. And I had offered to be his assistant to come down and during the baseball off season and clean up his office, do anything just to be around him. And after him saying to me, "You don't want to live with me, kid, do you?" And I said, no, I've got an aunt and uncle who live in the area. I'll go live with them, and I can just, come up to your place, and maybe for a week I'll come down there and just to help you out. I'm sure you've got another book. That's what I'd said. I said, I'm sure you have another book in you, which actually was what he was working on at the time. So there was kind of this, fortune cookie type approach that I had taken with him that seemed to work, which was by the way, it was a lie. I did not have an aunt and uncle who lived in the area. But I needed to take the, onus off of, or the big promise of me coming down there if I was asking to stay with him. So I could remove that objection. And I stayed at a Motel 6 for $28 a night is what it was. Super cheap hotel. Maxed out my credit card to go down and see him. And I ate noodle soup because that's what I could afford.
What did you get from that experience? What
didn't I get? So I ended up staying him there for 33 days. That's one thing. Almost every single idea I had about what it would take to work with a professional athlete, because this is about 2.5, 3 years into my progress at this point. I had started to work with a brand new pro athlete. He was a rookie in the National Hockey League. But I didn't have a real sense of like what that world looked like yet. And because it was during the baseball off season, a lot of the top baseball players in the league would make a pilgrimage to come and see Harvey before the league started up again in February. And Harvey would invite me in and let me sit in on the sessions. So here I am sitting, like when you can see a master do their thing with the top level people in that sport as well. There's a lot of lessons that you learn. So a lot of the things that I thought that they'd be talking about weren't what they were talking about. Most of the stuff that they were talking about was sort of navigating what we were talking about before, relational, social challenges that happen with being a professional athlete, whether it's with their wife, with its family members. And it came down to like, how can I really master my emotional regulation around this? How can I be better at this? The second thing that I learned from Harvey was whatever context I had of what it meant to be a mental game person was thrown out the window by just seeing him and how he talked to them. So there's one particular moment where he was talking to a baseball player, and they were kind of complaining about their wife in the moment. And Harvey said, this is probably a couple minutes in. Harvey says, "Holy fuck, are you done? Because I can't hear you sound like a little bitch anymore." And it was just, I was like, and I was in the corner and I was like, oh my God, he just called. And this is one of the most famous baseball players in the world. And I'm like, did he just call him a bitch? Are you even allowed to call it? He just swore at him like 3 or 4 times. But when you knew Harvey and you know how other people, that was the thing that everyone loved about him, because it's how he was built. And so I asked him afterwards about that. And he's like, Todd, it's because we had kind of similar backgrounds. I grew up on a farm and ranch around very blue collar world. He's like, that's just how you're built. That's how I'm built. This is how we talk. And if people can't take it, they're not your clients. They're not your customers. You don't need to be the right fit for everybody. Like there was mountains of mental game coaching that he was giving me to help me in my own career. So, anyway, like there's so many things that I got to see from Harvey and how he supported people and how much they just valued that direct honesty because they just didn't get it from other people. And they needed someone to call them out on their own shit when they were kind of delivering it to other people. And it's what I've also become known for. But it's also why it's very important for me to point back to the people who allowed me to stand on their shoulders and build my own career and say, like, you know, I've got no problem saying Harvey Dorfman is the greatest of all time. I could hope to aspire to be as prolific as he was. I love honoring the people who helped me out. So going back to your original question, sorry for the long answer, but speaking did it, and then mentoring were the two big activators that allowed me to get into working with higher and higher quality people. So you need to build a platform. So that kind of to everyone else, you need to build a platform for yourself, something that you're ideally is where you're going to end up finding your clients and customers. I would go anywhere. I mean, I carried my shitty Office Depot white flip, my flip chart into sweaty hockey locker rooms with 13-year-old boys who had just finished a game. And this is in the first probably 4.5 months of me kicking off. And so there's 17 boys in the room, 13 of them and their parents walked out and only 4 stuck around. And I had my back to the 4 kids as the people were filing out because it was an optional thing. Hey, do you want to stick around and learn about mental game stuff? And I was writing my name up on the board, as you do, because that's what you learn from teachers. Put your name up on the board. I was writing my name up there. And I thought to myself in that moment, oh, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. Because while other people might have viewed it as rejection, you know, you're losing more than half your audience, well more than half your audience. I was thinking to myself, like, I'm just as excited to talk to these 4 kids than if I was talking to all 17. I'm winning. I'm going to win. Like, and it was just, I can take you to that moment. It's kind of very similar to when Michael Jordan talked about his experience of when he sunk a baseline shot with North Carolina. And that's when he knew he was going to be one of the best ever.
How did you navigate the initial, if you felt it, imposter syndrome? Like, how did you navigate, like, you had value to teach these young kids when you initially started?
Okay, so one, I had a bunch of rules in my head that were just stupid. Okay, so one thing I was lucky with was learning the skill of speaking and impromptu speaking, because you have to do that when you're in 4-H's. They just give you a topic in the moment and they say, okay, now talk about the new North America Free Trade Agreement that just happened between Canada and the United States. And I mean, as an 11-year-old kid, you might not know anything about it other than maybe a soundbite you heard from your parents, but you needed to talk about it and you needed to be able to know how to structure something. So the practice of that stuff kind of broke a little bit of the imposter syndrome, because you had frameworks in your head on how to talk about something that didn't position you as an expert, but maybe as a curator or as a reporter to people. Okay. So that was one thing that helped, but I did have some rules. One rule was I had this idea that I couldn't be a really high impact speaker unless I had multiple letters behind my name, because I'm going on talking about mental game stuff. So like I needed to have degrees then. Wouldn't I need degrees in order to go and talk about it? Which created resistance for me. I didn't really call it imposter syndrome. But it was just resistance for me, which wasn't true. And I thought that really you needed to have 3 best-selling books, like not one. You needed 3 best-selling books in order for you to go out there and be really respected as a speaker, which is just, it's not true at all. That's not true. But I did it. I went and did it anyways. So it's kind of the idea of feel the fear and do it anyway. I went and did it anyway. Didn't mean that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed when I was up there, but the process of getting things booked, I was making it difficult on myself in doing the initial outreach. but then momentum caught and people started basically, you know, sharing my name with other people. And I helped to engineer that, because when I would finish my talk, I would say, by the way, I know a lot of you parents that are in the back of the room, you might have other kids who weren't here tonight, and maybe you'd like them to hear the same message. I'm doing this talk for free over the course of the next 90 days. If you'd like to come up and have me come out and speak to their, you know, swim club, volleyball team, association, I'd be happy to do it. And that call to action was huge, like engineering that. But to your point of imposter syndrome, I think we've over-indexed way too much on imposter syndrome in society. We talk about it. Like the word anxiety wasn't a word that we ever used in the late 90s, early 2000s. There's all these great disorders and these maladies that people want to make up. Imposter syndrome isn't even the right word, by the way. The original root of that term came from the 1970s, two women in Texas who, when they were doing a study on women in the workforce, because that was a brand new sort of career move, really that's very still recent, 1970s, where, you know, it was socially acceptable for women to go in the workforce. They found in this study that women kept on mentioning that they felt that there was imposter phenomenon. They called it the imposter phenomenon of trying to be great as a career woman while also being great as a mom. And that sort of role conflict that was created this intersection of an imposter phenomenon. Like, I feel like I'm not a great mom. I'm not great in my career either, but I have these competing goals. That's how it started. And then it turned into a syndrome. And then it really spiked. I did a post about this on social media that went viral a few years ago, where, because I had never really came up around the word. Again, I'm in the mental game space, Chase. Never, that word wasn't ever brought up. And I start to see this spike in it because of social media. So I'm like, oh, let's go to Google Trends. Everyone here can go and do it. Go and find a term that you all of a sudden hear a lot about, and then go to Google Trends and just type in the word and just see how search volume starts to go up. You know what caused the spike in imposter syndrome to go up? Instagram. When you can see it, you can literally see it. You can go to my post on my Instagram account and you can see it. It's on LinkedIn as well and Twitter. There's this massive spike on Google Trends in 2010. Why? Because people started to posture on social media that their lives were perfect. And then they wonder why they're walking around with, quote, an imposter syndrome, because you're posturing to the world that you've got it all fucking figured out, but you don't. Like, I don't care. Like, I know in the world of the mental game, world class. I'm not going to apologize for that. I've done the reps, I've done the work. You know, I've got the clientele for it too. I've spoken on the stages, I've trained, I've licensed my materials into multiple organizations. Why would I need to apologize for that?
Yeah.
I share, I'm very generous, but I don't act like now, because I coach this, I teach this, that all of a sudden my entire life is flawless and doesn't have its own rough edges that need to be constantly carved, because I'm a human being. And so people who posture in the world of self-help and personal development, you know, like, I'm like, no, they can own the imposter syndrome. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you said it's not the correct word, and after learning about it, I definitely agree. I guess the correct word would just be fear, and just doing it in spite of the fear.
Well, I think probably out of all of the books that frames it the best, is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. And when he just calls it resistance, I think he created in that book such a perfect frame around it, because you can kind of let this word resistance in many forms that it comes in. You can go in and dissect it and figure out, hey, well, what is the resistance that I have around this thing? Is my resistance just that I don't have enough exposure to the idea or the skill yet, and I just need to do it? You're an athlete, you know that you need to just build the skill. Just be practical with it. Or is there actually some deeper rooted things that are there that are kind of holding me back with it? Or is it I'm just in the wrong environment? Is that where the resistance is coming? Is the environment and the people that are around? Well, maybe I can get around some different people, and all of a sudden the resistance starts to lift.
Mhm.
So
That's one of the best books I've
so good.
read. It's so good. And you're exactly right. The resistance and the muse, the two terms that he uses there, it's extremely comforting after you read that book. A lot of times I think people will unrightly expect that after they commit to doing something, whether it be, like doing a podcast or something great, or they found their purpose, quote unquote, they expect there no longer to be resistance. They
Yeah.
have done, they have found the thing, they are going to do the thing now because that is what they're called to do. But I love Stephen Pressfield in that book, how he says, like, once you find that thing, that's when you're going to experience the most resistance, whether or not he calls, because like, the whatever that is, the resistance is trying to hold you back and stopping you from fulfilling that potential. And so for me, like with the podcast, like, I get great fulfillment from this, like talking to people and providing this value and creating something, great fulfillment. But that does not mean that before every single episode or reaching out to every single guest, I'm like, that resistance, man, like that voice in the back of your head telling you like, you don't do it, you don't have anything to do. But it's crazy.
Yeah. But then ultimately though, when you come to that realization, so then if it's always going to be there, then it's just a practical part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
So then it doesn't mean that much to you. It's just, you can notice it. You can watch it more. You can be almost an observer of the resistance. I mean, it's something that I talk about with, whether it's CEOs or, when I do workshops with people all the time, it's like, when you can move into that observer, you can be an observer of yourself. And that's the power of the alter ego in its forms and its evolutions that happens, is that disassociative nature of it, because you're the one who's choosing and you're building this altered identity or this persona that's custom built for this one, I call it field of play, this role that's in your life, this area. One of the great powers of it from a sort of psychological standpoint is it can create a disassociative narrative in your own head, because now this resistance that shows up or this rejection that happens, it's not happening to quote you, it's happening to the alter ego, whether it's the mask or the shield. It's one of the great values that people have found in using it, which then when you're not getting rejected, then it actually allows quote you to be more free in your the way that you show up in that particular area. And there's nothing fake in it. It's one of the funny objections that some people have with the idea. There's nothing fake in it.
What was the initial spark or impetus for the alter ego, and how did it evolve into this idea that you then were able to write your book about?
Well, as I started working with higher quality and caliber athletes, and the one thing that was a bit different about my approach, most of the people that were my peers would stay in the lane of one particular sport. So like say Bob Rotella was always in golf. Even though Timothy Galloway really didn't do mental game coaching in tennis, but he was in tennis. And so the problem with staying inside of one industry is you might end up not being able to see the forest through the trees. So because I was operating in multiple sports and I started working with better quality athletes, this theme kept on showing up, where people talk about, hey, I've got this persona that I use when I go on the ice, or I call myself X. So it'd be a name, a nickname, it'd be a persona, it'd be a character. I have this other identity, or some people, so all these different words to just talk about the intentionality of showing up through a different self kind of thing. So I would say, oh my God, I did these. So it was more of a shared experience. I go, I did the exact same thing. When I played football, I had my alter ego Geronimo. And so I wasn't coaching anyone on it yet. It was just, oh, that's really neat. How do you do it? Let me understand it. Oh, interesting. So in 2002, early 2003, I was preparing an athlete for the Athens Games, the Olympics in 2004. So we were about a year and a half out. And it was just the way that she had said, hey, like when my middle finger hits the water, so when she dives in, When my middle finger hits the water, that's when, and then she named her alter ego, but she actually used the term alter ego. That's when my alter ego takes over. And I was like, all of these neurons fired in my head at the same time. They all kind of came together like, wait a second, this is a thing, because 56 other conversations went off in my head with other athletes. And I'm like, oh, this is not just a unique connection point between me and them. This is an actual device. Interesting. So I went back and I interviewed past clients and current clients. Hey, remember when you talked about this? Can you tell me, when did you create it? What caused you to create it? What was getting in the way? And I'm just sort of unpacking all this. What's your method that you use? And so some people, it was just a character. It was just a name that they used to sort of organize their thoughts. That's what a lot of it would do. It would kind of organize their thinking to bring some focus into this next task that they needed to do. Other people, it was a lot more emotional. So there's lots of different avenues and reasons that people were coming in to use it. So in unpacking their process, I had my own that I used for building Geronimo. That's when I built out the method. It started with 7 steps, and now it's sort of more codified into 5 sort of core milestones to go through with different processes inside of it. But it's to build out like a fully fleshed identity that you're in control of. Because there are some people who had alter egos that would work for them, but they would also control them in some way. And that's not what we want. We want to bring some more emotional stability for people. So that was the impetus for it, was that. And then very quickly, only about 6 months later, because I was then talking to Harvey, my mentor, about this. I'm like, hey, I just built this new kind of protocol. I call it identity-based performance. And he was like, oh, that's really good. And then he added to it with me where he's like, yes, this picture uses it too. And so it was more like a meeting of the minds type of thing. And I know I actually just get chills thinking about it, because the gift that I was able to give back to Harvey was then he was able to look at me and see me as a bit of a peer. And I had brought a new idea to him as well, because then he started using it with clientele. He's like, oh, that's really good. I never noticed that before. And then that's when he said, I think it's because you were working in so many different sports. That's probably why you noticed it, or why it was able to kind of reveal itself. So that's how it started. And then very quickly was when Kobe had reached out to Harvey to work with Harvey when he was going through his sexual assault trial. Kind of the story is inside of the HBO documentary on Kobe that I'm in. And then Harvey passed him to me because he said, hey, I think you need to, this is an identity thing, and you should go work with my peer, Todd. And so that's how Kobe got introduced to me.
I was going to say, I've got a book
and
right
then we
here.
Built the Black Mamba.
Yeah, I got a book right here. You and Kobe built the Black Mamba. Mm-hmm. What is unique about Kobe's alter ego and special about it?
Okay, so one of a part of the process of helping anyone, and this is not just an athlete, but I invite everybody into the idea of building a mental movie theater in your own head, where you can go and practice your skills. And I call it a mental movie theater, but for some people, they build an actual field where they go out onto. It's all very contextual to you. Like, what's the environment that you want to go into? But for me, it's a mental movie theater you go into. You can watch yourself perform. You can watch highlight reels of yourself. You're able to, mine has an armory on the side of it where I can pull tools down and practice new tools. There's also a balcony with my mentor sitting on top of it as well, that sometimes they're going to coach me from above and tell me, or some of them are going to come down and they're going to, like Benjamin Franklin, coming out and showing me like how to deliver a more persuasive talk to people. Like, hey, Todd, like you don't need to just stay right here in the middle of the stage. You can also walk down and be a part of the audience as well. Because that was something that he would do. Anyway, so we go in and we do that. And with Kobe, what he would do with eventually, what we had started with was a snake. That was the original alter ego, was a snake. It wasn't the Black Mamba. That came about 8 months later, as all identities do, right? Just every alter ego is going to evolve over time. It's not fixed. It's going to evolve, right? Flexibility, adaptability, agility. So our identities all evolve The alter ego will evolve too. And then it evolved into, he got the name for it, the Black Mamba, which he was very excited about when he had pinged me. He's like, I got it. I got the name. That was when it kind of really collapsed into place for him in his head. But before that, when we're talking about the mental movie theater, we had the snake in a cage, and most of the time when someone's going to unleash something, like, hey, I'm going to unleash the beast in sport, like we use those terms so much. When we're going to unleash something, we're going to open the cage. Kobe was very unique in that he didn't let it out. He wanted to climb in with it. So he got into the cage with the snake. And because he wanted to, his words were, I wanted to commune with it. To really become it. I don't need it to go out there and prove anything to anybody. His was, and then as he matured and became a better leader, because he was not a very good leader when I was working with him. He was not very good in the locker room. He wasn't very good with other people. He evolved into that later in his career. But he really truthfully wanted to be the best version that he could be. He really didn't anchor too much up against other people. Jordan a little bit, which was also one of the reasons why we chose the snake, because it's Michael Jordan's greatest fear is snakes.
Interesting.
So it was his one way of one-upping Jordan. That's why he loved the idea when I had presented it to him on being a snake.
That's really cool. I didn't know that, but that checks out with Kobe.
Yeah. So that's what that process sort of looked like for Kobe. I mean, it's that he got into the cage with the thing to commune with it. And again, I'm not saying that as a prescription for other people. That's the really, really fun part of the career that I've been able to have is the creative part of it is really just the ultimate unlock part for helping people find their flow and their peak state and peak performance. It's the creative imagination. It's the really unique part that human beings have that most people don't honor very well in how they show up.
We've been talking a lot about mental toughness and sport and athlete. This is applicable to everyday career. How can we apply this to our everyday or to improve our career or our craft?
Well, I mean, it's to bring it back into like the idea of reps. So if you think about the idea of going into your own mental movie theater, just using that one as an example, and you commit, I'm going to spend the next 30 days just playing with it. No, don't go in with expectations. Just going in and playing out my tomorrow in my head. So like, I know what my calendar looks like. I know what my routine looks like with getting the kids ready, or, whatever your world looks like, play it out. Like how would you like to move through your morning? Build that in your head. What's the presence that you would most want to be bringing? Like when you think about the greatest version of you as a dad or a mom, like what's the experience that you want to be gifting your kids with in the morning before they go off to school? So what does that look like? Just playing it in your mind, seeing it happen. How do you greet them when they come downstairs? Or when you go into the office, how do you, if you are someone who struggles with, quote, being shy, like what if in your head first you practice the idea of making eye contact with everybody and you're like, hey, good morning, Sue. By the way, how did your race go on the weekend? Hey, Chase, I know you competed in the ultra marathon that was supposed to kill you. Looks like you're still alive, buddy. Like, and your mustache still looks fucking awesome. Good for you, right? Whatever it is, but like play it over in your head, practice it, and then commit to doing it again tomorrow, and then see if it did impact the actual reality of your day. So I build it in my head. Then I'm just going to see, did it shift? So how are we going to be able to do that? Well, we need to be able to log and look at the game film at the end of our day. So I look at the game film and I go, today it just felt like a calmer day. Oh, that's an interesting data point. All right, go into your mental movie theater. Let's work out tomorrow. What does tomorrow look like? And then when you notice that your pattern is about creating negative expectations, that's not That's a trained version of you. That isn't you. That's just a trained version of you. Like, okay, oh, scratch, scratch. Let's go back and replay that again. How do I want it to look? Not don't want to look. Very, very, very easy. Negative pattern recognition is it's a superpower of human beings. It was there to help us keep us alive. When we're walking through the bush, is what that thing over there is rustling. What is that? Oh my God. Oh, it's a bunny rabbit. Never mind. It's not a saber-toothed tiger. So when you're going through your mental movie theater, you're able to catch those things. Be mindful of them. You're bringing awareness into it. What do I want it to look like tomorrow when I'm getting up tomorrow in front of the group and I'm doing my little presentation on our financial numbers for, the first quarter of 2026? What do I want it to look like? Practice that for 30 days. And then that's what it looks like for the quote average person, which that's not true. There's no average person. There's ways that we can all be applying these things. And we don't need to build a big story and narrative around, who can do it, who can't do it. I will encourage people though, that there is about 20% of the population that can't build like they can't see pictures in their own head. Okay. My wife is one of them. And so when I say going into your movie theater, it's not just about visuals. It can be sound. So like you hear things, maybe it's you hear the narrative. I'm very much wired for audio. So I can hear the voices of Benjamin Franklin or Joseph Campbell or Mr. Rogers, and my own dad are my two coaches for being, super dad for my kids. I can hear the voices and I can hear what they would say. I know what their pattern of coaching me sounds like, or smell. What do you want it to smell like? So it's more a holographic, using all of these sensory type things when you're going into whatever your mental movie theater is. If for you, when you close your eyes or you're imagining something, you only see black, doesn't matter. That's okay. I'm telling you, it's normal. There's a lot of people who cannot see pictures, but you can hear things.
It's so amazing how much the mental rep actually applies to physical changes or mental changes that occur. I remember learning about this when I was younger, like right out of high school. I was learning how to do Olympic lifting. I was learning how to snatch, and obviously very like the most complicated lift, like timing needs to be perfect. And it comes down to if you catch it a millimeter too high or too back, you dump it, you drop the weight. So like very, very specific.
Precise.
Yes. And I remember that's when I kind of initially got exposed to how valuable walking through the movement through your mind was, and how that actually has a similar, like just barely less effective than actually physically doing the movement. And so like I would do the movements, and then at home right before I'd go to bed, I'd lay in bed and I'd walk through that, just, each step, how I'm going to stand, how my elbows are going to be, where my knuckles are pointed down, where my back is, where I'm looking, and a full extension, reach that first extension, then triple extension, when I'm going to bend and pull through and punch, and just walking through that over and over. And when I applied that each day, the next day I'd go, it would just come a little smoother and a little quicker. It's so awesome.
And I say you were kind of, I don't know if you were doing this, but the big mistake that people get with visualization is they think it's about closing your eyes and doing it. And it's not. In fact, that's actually probably one of the slower ways of building out and flexing this muscle, because visualization, like anything, imagery, imagination, skills, is a skill. Okay. And most people have not practiced it. They do have a practiced imagination skill, but most of the time it is practiced in what they don't want to have happen. So they create a lot of worry, fear, anxiety, stress in their life, doubt, because they're using imagination to bring about or to think about what they don't want to have happen. So instead, if we were, I've got this little car in front of me, and let's say this was a whether it's a pole or a stick, and you're practicing your lift, I would say, no, have an object in your hand, and like you could be sitting on the edge of and now that there's a prop, it engages your physical world and your environmental world differently, including your imagination. And so now you've got something to ease into building the imagination skills. So, the equipment managers on National Hockey League teams do not like me because I'm the pain in the ass that has them, they get done their practice for the day before their game when they're traveling, and all of their equipment is being handled by the equipment managers while they go up to their hotel rooms and stuff. Whereas some of my guys, they have their stick and they have their gloves brought up to their room as well. So it creates like a bit of a organizational nightmare for some of them, but it's because I'm trying to work with them on their imagery skills. And it's a lot easier for me to do it. I'm like, no. If we're going to work on your puck handling, let's have your gloves in the room and a stick. And then you sit on the end of your bed. Don't stand. I want you to sit. And they don't even know why I'm saying, for me, I don't really care. But it's just because I'm giving them direction to sit. And then I want you to just imagine the flow. Keep your eyes open if you want. And you could be looking at the carpet, something and you're just moving your stick back and forth. But I want you to do it in slow motion, like really feel like, so for you, when you're doing your snatch, it's like, you're really feeling the slow motor movement of how things click and the locking that happens, right? In your shoulders and everything else, and in your spine, like L5 locks into L4 and 3. Like you can visualize that. You can feel the strength of your spine coming into it, right? Like I'm telling you right now, and I could just see your body language move.
I know. I was just thinking about that. I was like, yep, that's the way I think about it. It's like I start with my toes and then like how they all engage and how my foot grips and twists the ground, and like I just build all the way up to my head. And I would actually, most times that when I would do it is I would be driving to my house and to the gym twice a day. And obviously that's a repeat drive. So I would grab the steering wheel 10 and 2. I would have a hook grip, which is, you wrap your fingers over the thumb to make sure you don't lose the bar. And that's how I grab the steering wheel. And then I wouldn't see the road anymore. I'd just be going through my movement at that time. That's so cool. Well, Todd, I have 2 questions that always wrap it up. I know we got to get you going here soon. 2 questions. First is, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then the second is based off of a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote: if we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads. What's a book you most recommend for me? Give me your own and then give me another.
So the alter ego effect, right? Yeah, absolutely. The book that I talk about probably the most is Seeking Wisdom from Darwin to Munger. And it's kind of about the first principles thinking that Charlie Munger, he's one of my kind of superheroes in my head, just his ability to break things, pull first principles from many, many different domains and organize them in his head. I love him because he thinks about the world in a very different way than I would, which is kind of where I lean towards, is trying to find people who don't, think quite as, the same as me. So that's a book. It's a meaty book. So it's not something you're gonna pick up and slam down in an evening. And then from the perspective of who's someone, well, man, there's so many friends that I would. Well, I mean, I'd throw it back at you. Is there a specific domain that you're looking at talking to people about or in?
I mean, kind of in the same line as what you just said, interested in talking to people who think differently than you. I've been trying to expand out kind of that way. I mean, I'm very interested in what you talk about, being an athlete, and you and I kind of fall along. Like, I study what you say. I've done that before. So trying to get kind of more of the abstract artist side of things is definitely kind of where I'm trying to go right now too, to expand my.
You know what? Here's a person, I would say, a friend of mine, Dory Clark, just because she's got a very different background and experience than me, as well. Because there's a lot of people who I could think of that sort of fit into my avatar of who Todd is. But I'd say Dory, she's very articulate. She's written multiple bestsellers and books as well. And I think she's someone that your audience would appreciate too.
Awesome. Well, Todd, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they get more?
ToddHerman.me is my home base on the interwebs, so people can find me there. I, pump out a newsletter for people every single week just about principles of, mastering your own psychology and, leading your life with principles that are going to help you to have the type of life that you would most want, all taken from what I would consider the field of play, like actually working with people through the complexities of trying to lead your life in a very powerful way.
Well, Todd, again, thank you so much for your time. This was an absolute pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.